On October 27, 1962, a Soviet submarine was being depth-charged by American destroyers in the Atlantic Ocean. The submarine had lost communication with Moscow for days. The crew believed nuclear war had already started. The submarine commander wanted to launch his nuclear torpedo. One nuclear torpedo that would have started a nuclear exchange that would have killed hundreds of millions of people. One man stopped him. Not a president, not a general, not a world leader. A Soviet naval officer named Vasili Arkhipov. He was the only person on that submarine with the authority to veto the launch. He vetoed it. You are alive today because of a decision made by one man in a submarine nobody knew existed until decades later. And that was not even the closest the world came to nuclear war. The Cold War lasted from 1947 to 1991, 44 years. And in those 44 years, the United States and the Soviet Union came closer to destroying the entire planet on multiple occasions than any government has ever admitted to their citizens. Not once, not twice, multiple times. And most of those moments were kept secret for decades. Some are still classified. What has been declassified is enough to make every person alive understand that the world they live in today came within minutes, sometimes within seconds, of not existing. The Cuban Missile Crisis of October 1962 is the one most people know. 13 days in October. American U-2 spy planes discovered Soviet nuclear missiles being installed in Cuba. President John F. Kennedy was briefed on October 16th. His advisors argued about the response for days. Some wanted an immediate airstrike. Some wanted a ground invasion. Some wanted to do nothing and hope the missiles were not yet operational. Kennedy chose a naval blockade. Soviet cargo ships were already approaching Cuba with more missiles. On October 24th, they reached the American blockade line. For 6 hours, the world held its breath. Secretary of State Dean Rusk sat in the White House Situation Room and said, "We are eyeball to eyeball," and I think the other fellow just blinked. The Soviet ships turned back. But the crisis was not over, because nobody in Washington knew about the submarine. Soviet submarine B-59 had been underwater for weeks. No communication with Moscow. No news from the surface. The crew was overheated, exhausted, and running out of oxygen. When American destroyers began dropping depth charges to force the submarine to surface, the crew believed it was an act of war. Commander Valentin Savitsky wanted to launch the nuclear torpedo. He had the authority. He only needed the agreement of 2 other senior officers. The political officer agreed. Vasili Arkhipov, the fleet commander aboard and the 3rd required officer, refused. He argued that if nuclear war had actually started, they would have received orders from Moscow. The silence from Moscow meant it was not war. It was a signal to surface. He persuaded Savitsky. The submarine surfaced. The torpedo was not launched. And the world continued. Arkipov's name was unknown to the public for decades. The man who prevented nuclear war was classified information. But October 1962 was not the last time. On September 26, 1983, in the middle of one of the most tense periods of the entire Cold War, a Soviet nuclear early warning system detected 5 American intercontinental ballistic missiles heading toward the Soviet Union. The officer on duty at the monitoring station was Lieutenant Colonel Stanislav Petrov. Protocol required him to report the warning immediately up the chain of command. If he reported, Soviet leadership would have had minutes to decide whether to launch a retaliatory nuclear strike before the American missiles hit. Stanislav Petrov had 60 seconds. He looked at the warning. He looked at the data. He decided the system was malfunctioning. He did not report it. He was right. It was a false alarm. A satellite malfunction caused by sunlight reflecting off clouds in a way the system misread as missile launches. If Petrov had followed protocol, if he had reported what his screen was telling him, Soviet leadership would have launched. The United States would have detected an incoming Soviet strike and launched in return. Most of the northern hemisphere would have been destroyed in under an hour. Stanislav Petrov did not follow protocol. He used his judgment. He saved the world. He was reprimanded by his superiors for failing to follow procedure. He received no medal, no reward, no official recognition. He died in 2017. Quietly, in his apartment, the man who saved the world. That same autumn, November 1983, NATO conducted a military exercise called Operation Able Archer. It simulated a nuclear first strike against the Soviet Union. The exercise was so realistic, so detailed in its simulation of actual nuclear launch procedures, that Soviet intelligence became convinced it was not an exercise at all. They believed America was using the cover of a military exercise to conduct a real first strike. Soviet nuclear forces were quietly raised to their highest alert level. Soviet aircraft in East Germany were loaded with nuclear weapons and placed on standby. The world came closer to nuclear war in November 1983 than at almost any other point in the Cold War. Nobody in the public knew. A British intelligence officer, Oleg Gordievsky, was a KGB double agent working for MI6. He saw what was happening on the Soviet side. He passed the intelligence to the West. His information convinced Ronald Reagan that the Soviets genuinely believed they were about to be attacked. Reagan changed his approach to the Soviet Union. Operation Able Archer is one of the reasons the Cold War eventually ended without nuclear exchange. Because one double agent told the West that the Soviets were genuinely terrified. And these are only the crises that have been partially declassified. In 1979, a NORAD computer malfunction generated a warning of 2,200 incoming Soviet missiles. American nuclear bomber crews started their engines. Launch procedures began. 6 minutes later, a technician found the malfunction. The launches were aborted. In 1983, a Soviet satellite also generated a false nuclear attack warning. The officer on duty, Stanislav Petrov, was the same man who would face an identical situation weeks later. He did the right thing twice. In 1995, a Norwegian weather rocket was briefly tracked by Russian radar as a potential incoming American nuclear missile. Russian President Boris Yeltsin had the nuclear briefcase opened. He had minutes to decide. He decided to wait. The rocket passed harmlessly. The briefcase was closed. 3 times in 12 years, 1983, 1983, and 1995, the world came within minutes of nuclear exchange because of equipment failures and misread data. Not aggression, not war. Accidents. The nuclear weapons that almost ended the world during the Cold War are still there. The United States has approximately 5,500 nuclear warheads. Russia has approximately 6,200. The doomsday clock, maintained by the Bulletin of Atomic Scientists, currently stands closer to midnight than at any point since the Cuban Missile Crisis. The systems that Stanislav Petrov watched in 1983 have been updated. But humans are still watching screens, still making 60-second decisions, still being asked to determine whether what they are seeing is a malfunction or the end of the world. Now I need to ask you directly, did you know these stories before today? Did your school teach you about Vasili Arkhipov or Stanislav Petrov? Did anyone ever tell you how many times the world survived the Cold War by accident? Drop your answer in the comments right now. And tell me, where in the world are you watching from? Because this story belongs to every person on Earth who is alive today, partly because of decisions made by 2 Soviet officers nobody told them about. Share this video right now. Someone in your life thinks the Cold War ended safely because world leaders were wise and careful. Show them Vasili Arkhipov in a submarine being depth-charged. Show them Stanislav Petrov at a console with 60 seconds to decide. Show them what the doomsday clock reads today. Follow The Odd Archive on Facebook. Follow us on YouTube. Search Official The Odd Archive. Follow us on TikTok. Search Official The Odd Archive. Because the next story we are dropping involves a government decision that killed thousands of its own people. The decision was signed on official paper. We have the document.